Welcome to Beyond the Helmet. I'm your host, Steve McGrath, and in this episode of our podcast, I am pleased to bring you my conversation with Usama Young. Now, Usama played his NFL career over the course of 8 seasons between the Saints and also some time with the Browns and then the Raiders before he ultimately hung it up. And since hanging it up, Usama has taken the time to work very closely to help people, whether that is with the NFL, helping guys intro and exit the NFL, but also with his Believe in You Foundation. So Usama is going to break down how he made it through the NFL, what he's doing now. But before we get to that, of course, I need to remind you all that we are brought to you by Team Builder. Team Builder works with over 500 high school football programs nationwide, as well as colleges and the NFL. So if you have a strength and conditioning program that hasn't been looked at in a while, go give it some love, fresh it up. Go to Team Builder, use the promo code VICTORY. You're going to get the free gift. So go show them some love. And also don't forget, Zone In CBD. I'm going to remind you about it. Lofa Tatupu's company. It's a great product. If you're looking for anything CBD related, if you're trying to reduce your stress, help come back from any sort of physical injuries, do your own research, but please also keep in mind, Zone In is as good as it gets. Now, without any further ado, here is Usama Young. All right. I am pleased to be joined by 8-year NFL vet, Usama Young. Usama, thank you for taking the time today, man. How's it going?
Man, thank you for having me. It's going well, making the most out of the situation.
And that's all we can really do, right? I mean, we've kind of been dealt a weird hand with the social distancing and trying to make our routines work with some obvious adjustments. But hey, you can only control what you can control, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm making the most out of it. I look out this and see this sun. That's a good thing. I see the positive vibes. I get the positive vibes outside of looking at TV because sometimes the media can be negative. But I got a family. I got life. I'm breathing this fresh air. It's all good, man.
Life can certainly be worse, even though it's not going the best. It could always be worse. So I certainly
Indeed.
appreciate that. Now, before we started here, you were talking just a little bit about what you've been doing since your retirement, because of course you've been out of the league for a couple of years now, but you're obviously a guy that wants to give back and help other people. So just jumping into this, can you talk about how you navigated life after being an NFL player? Because it has to be such a tough adjustment to take off that helmet. I mean, just what's the road been like?
You know, it is tough. It is tough. And thinking about my transition, it wasn't a smooth road. A lot of people would immediately think that just seeing what I'm doing now. But yeah, the journey had some bumps, some speed bumps. I fell a few times. I got back up. But I'll say that ending my career off an injury is what immediately made it tough. You know, we often see a lot of the guys that go off into the sunset. You know, the Peyton Mannings or the Ray Lewises, those guys that win a Super Bowl and then they say, you know what, it's time to go into my next career path. And then you see them on TV and, you know, they're still doing great things. And, you know, that's not the journey for everybody. I walked away from the game at a point where I thought that I was still going to be able to play. My last game, I went in for a tackle and someone else dove in from my team. And when my foot was planted, it hit my leg, and my leg didn't bend in a natural way.
Oh.
And next thing you know, ACL, LCL, MCL, and a few other pieces were not in the right place. And I tried to get back, but I wasn't able to. I rehabbed. I thought I could still run that 4.340, but it wasn't happening. And eventually teams were not interested. So I had to figure out what was next. The good thing was that throughout my career, I was able to be in the process of running the foundation, Believe in You, that we started it in my 3rd year playing. And we had been mentoring youth. We had been taking them on college tours. We've been having free football and cheerleading camps, volunteering in the area. And that was something that provided a lot of just peace of mind. And also, a year after I hung them up, I had my first child. And having her, that helped me out significantly. I was a dad now, and it wasn't just about me. And football was no longer just the driving force of my life. I had to make sure that she was all right, and I had to make sure that she saw someone that could not just play football, but did a lot to serve the community and could provide a stable home. So it's been a journey. Like I said, it wasn't all the glitz and glamour, but I'm still working on it and still trying to be better at everything that I do, whether that be running the foundation, whether that be being a daddy, whether that be working with the NFL.
And it's one of those things where you're kind of always an athlete, right? You might not be on the biggest stage anymore, but that competitive nature of always wanting to get better and do more, and that competition against yourself to continue to grow and perform, really, even again if it's not on the field, seems like it still has you in a good place, and you're still obviously making some headway.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Life provides opportunity for steady growth, and something that you alluded to early on in terms of making the most out of this situation that we're in right now. This is a growing period for all of us. I think about several other things that I haven't been able to do since before this pandemic hit our entire world. I wasn't spending as much time home as I could. I wasn't able to run around with my children like I would like to. I wasn't able to fix things on the home front like I did, like I should be able to. But now I'm able to not to say compartmentalize, but work some things in and work on my work habits, work on my study habits. I'm back in school and I'm able to sit at home and study and read and do some of the things. And if I wanted to get into learning a new language, right now might be the time for that. So we've got a lot more time than we once had, and we're stable. We're not. We're still. And now is the time to do it.
And shout out to Duolingo, an app that I'm on day 30 something on, trying to brush up on my Spanish, because I too see the opportunity in what we have where all of a sudden there's just a little bit more time. So absolutely, whether it's learn a language, learn anything, if you don't come out of the situation better and you just squandered all your opportunity while you're sitting around, you chose video games or just eating 10 meals a day, which is kind of hard to pass up. But I mean, it's now or never to sort of jump on that stuff.
Right. I wish I could play video games all day.
No, I did want to ask though, because you mentioned that you do work with the NFL, and if I have it right, it's in a player engagement type of capacity. Obviously, you've gone through some of the ups and downs of navigating that space, whether it's as an athlete or dealing with life after, and certainly coming into the league. What are just some of the common threads that you see with some of the guys that you work with, in terms of, is it always just sort of getting people to realize that football is a thing that they do, it's not necessarily who they are, and helping them sort of make that transition out of the league?
Yeah, that's accurate. I think that when you do get drafted or you do enter the league as an undrafted free agent, it's new to you. Yes, you've been playing football throughout your entire life, but you've had so many other things and so many other things in alignment with football that gave you structure. So as a student athlete, you had your courses, you had your practices, you had your meetings, you had study hall, you had your games, and then that's that. Boom. Now, once you hit the league, you've got football and you've got meetings, and then you've got a lot of time spent at home that you could be doing a lot with. You could do a lot of different things that pour into you, that build you up. And if you're able to prepare for it, it'll amount to success when you exit the game, or it could amount to even more success while you're in the game. Thinking about all the talents that several other guys have that I work with now, it's like, all right, now we just got to focus on certain areas so that we can hone in on it and make the most out of it. But with me, I was the same way. When I played the game, yeah, it was a lot of different things that I loved to do, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do afterward. It just so happened that I worked on them while I was playing. That foundation, hey, I'm glad that I did start it. And not to say that I recommend guys do that, but you start to pour into something, or you start to get into something that you're just as passionate about as football, and usually it will amount to success because you're putting in those same hours, or you're putting in almost as much as you are on the football field as you are into that next step or that next stage.
Got it. So a couple of things there that I picked out anyway was that, structure is a big thing that it seems like you would want to put onto a younger player that's coming into the league is understand, you have free time, but structure it well so that you're doing the right things in that time, but also highlighting what your characteristics and your strengths are so that you can find that passion that you may have so that it may not necessarily feel like work. It's something that you're almost doing out of love, which of course brings us back to, what you're doing with your foundation. It's one thing to volunteer time and help a cause, but to create your own foundation and to be just running with it year after year. Can you just tell us, what went into that decision and maybe anything that you have on the horizon, with the coronavirus stuff aside, what you're still looking bigger picture to do?
Well, it was something that was instilled in me in a young age, at a young age. Uh, Giving back, being selfless, that was something that my parents were made evident. They were great examples of that. I still remember a story when I was about 5 years old, 6 years old, going out, and we lived in DC at the time, and we would pass out meals. We would make meals as a community. Uh, I'm sorry, I was younger. So my parents and the other adults would make meals. That would be fried chicken. It might be spaghetti. It might be soup. It might be greens, but mac and cheese. And then we would go out and give these meals away to families that didn't have. And this was right in front of the White House. So you see all these people that don't have homes that aren't as fortunate as you are. And at a young age, I still remember my parents taking me to do that. And then I went back home and we didn't have any as much food in the refrigerator as we could have had. So my dad would get in his taxi, pick up a few people, make some money, and then go buy a bucket of chicken from KFC or Church's or Popeyes, and then bring that home. And that made it evident to me that, hey, you got to take care of others and then take care of yourself. So put others first. And as my mind was spinning and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, I said, hey, I want to figure out a way to give back. And that starts with youth, and that starts with educating, that starts with volunteering, and we mentor. So that was the steps that I took. And I think I hit the lottery with it. And even now in the position that I'm in, I'm able to mentor and I'm able to teach and I'm able to educate younger players, older players, guys that are about to go through the transition that from college and then transition out. It's never a balance in your life. It's more about figuring out how to sustain and how to how to live in an efficient manner. And when I say efficient, that can go into so many different definitions. But I mean, hey, you've got so many things that you can do. Let's hone in on some things that are going to give you a bit more ease in terms of how you live your life.
I love that. There was a lot in there, but that was awesome. That focus, right? You got to have focus, otherwise you're all over the place. Um,
Absolutely.
so now I wanted to just bring it back a couple steps because I'm sure you had a focus from an early age that you wanted to get to the NFL. And is this some urban legend that when you were like 7, 12 years old, that there was a dog that runs onto the field and you tackled it?
Yes, man. Urban legend. I don't know who wrote it up or who wrote it up. It didn't quite not quite like that, man. I've never been a big dog person. I do have a dog now, but I wasn't running away from no dog. Nah, it's funny. I had a tremendous focus at a young age, and yes, I was always stuck on making it to the NFL. And that happened at a young age by working at FedEx Field and RFK Stadium and seeing the likes of Darryl Green out there playing defensive back, being the fastest one in the field. And I was supposed to be selling cotton candy and lemonade, but I was not selling any of that. I was sitting up in the nosebleeds and I was watching the game. And that was one of those things where I said, man, eventually I'm going to be out on this field and I'm going to have thousands of people watching me. And that was what really made me harness in on focusing. And to this day, that's been my catchphrase that I tell youth: stay focused.
No, was it Daryl Green that was putting Tootsie Rolls in his socks?
Yes,
Did
yes, it
you ever
was.
put Tootsie Rolls in your socks?
So I was a Skittles guy, and I was a Skittles guy. Me and Marshawn came up around the same time. Now he's all the way out on the West Coast doing it, but I was that Skittles guy. I had to have some Skittles. That was the favorite candy for me, and that was the way I got a little bit of energy.
I love it. Well, so of course now you're very focused. We already talked about the fact that you were a multi-sport athlete. Track was very big for you in developing it and really getting that speed, let alone the other sports. But can you just talk about when you're 16, 17, 18? Of course, multi-sport athlete, but how does that road to Kent State come together for you?
It was a journey, and I'll take it a few years earlier. My ninth grade year, I was in an English class, and Miss McNeil, she asked me. She said, well, she asked everyone, "What do you all want to do when you get older?" And my initial response was, "I want to go to the NFL." And mind you, I had just broken my shoulder in a football game playing on the junior varsity team, and I'm in a sling, and she laughs. She laughs at me, and of course, all the class laughs as well. I'm the ninth grader, skinny, scrawny guy with a sling on, and I'm talking about going to the NFL, and I just broke my arm in the second game of the season on like the second play. And she brings me up after class, and she says, "Hey, look, Sam, I know you want to go to the NFL, but it's time to start thinking about other things. What's going to be your backup? What else do you want to do? What else are you passionate about?" And that was when I really started to think about it, because I had older brothers that played the game as well, and I saw them play at a high level, but at the same time, I didn't see any of those guys playing in the NFL. So I really started to think, what else is it? What else is it I want to do? And being a teacher was the first thing that came to mind. And then being a sports medicine major was the next one, and potentially being a head trainer on one of these teams, one of these NFL teams or collegiate teams. So I got into that, and I made sure to always have those good grades. I was an honor student throughout my high school tenure. When coaches started recruiting me, I was that guy. I was a leader on the team. I would stay after practice. I eventually was not that guy that was breaking his arm every year, but I ended up being one of the best players on my high school team. And when Kent State came to check me out, they asked the coaches, they asked my teachers, how was I? How was I as a student? How was I as a person? How was I outside of the field? And each and every one of them talked about my leadership, how I helped other people out, how I was known to help some of my teammates study, how I was just the guy that was selfless and a great teammate. And with that being said, Kent State, their coach AJ Pratt, he was the recruiter that came down. AJ comes in, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna offer you a scholarship." And that was the first scholarship offer that I got. And then he told me that several other schools are going to start showing interest after he leaves that building. And he left the building, and several more came in, from Virginia to Michigan State to Delaware to William and Mary. And I stuck with my original commitment to Kent State, and that was all she wrote.
I love it. And, one thing that I loved about Kent State while you were there was, you know, I'm sure at the time, right, in 2003, Josh Cribbs is quarterback. I'm sure the football landscape doesn't really know what to think of that. And then, this kid, Julian Edelman, comes in. He starts playing quarterback by the end of your time there. They were doing some different things that may not have necessarily, like, a little ahead of their time, maybe,
Yeah,
with just the dual threat type of quarterback, guys that would eventually be playing wide receiver, kick returners in the NFL.
right.
Um, During your time there, though, what did you or how did you sort of level your game up, just going from high school to the college level? Did you find that it was easy? I mean, I know as a freshman you started a bunch of games, so it was probably easier for you than most, but how did you sort of take on elevating your game once you got to college?
So I was a multi-sport athlete, and I prided myself on being a guy that played every position on the field in high school and before that. When I got to Kent, I was I had to switch that up. I could no longer play every position that wasn't allowed. I could no longer play baseball and run track. My coaches didn't want me to. So I focused on football, and I focused specifically on cornerback. And it didn't happen like that from the first day of camp because I was recruited to play free safety. And at free safety, I saw one-on-ones going on during the first camp practice. And I saw some of the receivers having their way. And I said, you know what? Let me go to this cornerback line. And I went over to the cornerback line and I played well, made some good plays. And afterwards, the head coach, Dean Pease, he calls me over. He says, hey, we're going to move you over to corner. And I'm cool with it because throughout my entire career, that's what I was used to. I was used to, hey, if the coach tells you to do something, you do it. So I said, all right, let's go. So I started to go back to playing cornerback, and I honed in on that. I worked with my teammates. I had a crew of corners and safeties that I loved throughout my career. Jack Williams was another great one. Abe Elam, Andre Kirkland. They all went to the NFL and played at a high level, and it was one of those things where I said, you know what, we got good guys around here. I'm not just going to be that guy that works with them. I'm going to work with some of these younger guys as well. But I just honed in on my craft every day, staying after a little bit, working on it. In this summer, making sure that I was always doing some things where it might be studying the old tape, it might be looking at my own film, just breaking down self tendencies and trying to get better throughout. By the time I was a senior, again, the same thing happened that was similar to high school, where those professional scouts start to come in. And they say, hey, you've been doing this at little old Kent. Do you think you could do it at the next level?
And I'm sure you're like, yeah, give me a shot. Just give me a chance and I will absolutely prove it to you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And typically I didn't respond like that, but that's what was going on through my head.
It's funny though, that theme of focus coming back, right? It doesn't matter. It just sort of, whatever you're doing, focusing in, giving 100% on just that narrow idea of what you want, as opposed to just sort of, let me try a little corner, a little safety, focus, get in. But I needed to know though, how much did, running in the 4.3s when it comes to the comp, how much does that boost one's draft stock? I mean, did you think that you were going to be going in the third round heading into the draft?
In a major way, it boosts your draft stock. And when I say that, so first off, I didn't go to the combine. I wasn't invited to the combine. After my senior year finished, we were one game away from being bowl eligible. I ended up finishing 6-6, and it was one of those things that was just disappointing. My football was done. Now, I was always a guy that thought positively. I was always the guy that said, you know what, I'm going to continue to play, but this college experience is over. And me and a friend of mine, a teammate, Danny Muir, he was a D lineman. We both, after that game, said to one another, man, this isn't it. This isn't it. Now, our draft stock at the time, I'm not sure where it was. I signed with an agent. His name's Andy Sims. I still speak with him to this day, but Andy kept it real with me. He said, look, I'm not going to be the one that's going to get you drafted. I'm gonna be your voice. I'm gonna speak highly of you when I do talk to GMs and coaches or whoever else I reach out to. But you're the one that's gonna make sure that you're in the NFL. So I signed up for training, and he had me training at a spot down in Nashville. I think it was a D1, and we did our pre-testing. We did 40s and vertical and everything. And my 40 was like a 4.40. My vertical was like a 41, and I went there for a few weeks, and then I called Andy. I said, hey man, I'm not even sure if I need this. I think I can work out at Kent State and continue to finish my degree. And he's like, hey, let's do it. So I went back to Kent, and I worked out at Kent with my strength and conditioning coach, with some of my teammates that were also looking to get drafted or go to the next level. And we focused on those drills that, ultimately scouts look at. And I was fortunate to run a 4.3. But before that, it was Andy always said, hey, look, as of right now, you're a 4-year starter. I'm thinking mid to late round draft pick, but my projection really doesn't mean anything. And that was another thing that I've been honing in on since I was younger. DBTH. Don't believe the hype. So whatever everyone else is telling you, whatever I was hearing, all that, it was just white noise. It was just stuff that I could ignore. And I ignored it, and I just continued to work. Now, after I ran that 40, I ended up having about 10 to 15 workouts where individual teams came up to Kent State to take me through defensive back drills, Wonderlic test, or was it on the chalkboard, also talking to my advisors and my coaches. And that's what really, I think, paid dividends when they actually came in and met me and spoke to my coaches and saw how I worked. Because I crushed every workout, and I just did everything that I did from day in and day out since I've been playing the game. I just went all out. Quarterbacks might have thrown bad balls, but I'm a defender, so I'll just try and get my hands on it. I'm diving in workouts. I'm doing everything it takes to get to the ball, and not just to put on a show, but because I love it. I love the game, and whether I'm in my pads or I'm in a t-shirt and in shorts, I'm gonna go all out. And I think from every coach that came and saw me during that or after that senior year, they were impressed by it, and it ultimately led to me being picked as high as I was.
That's awesome. Just again, the focus and the dedication just completely, paying dividends for you. What I love though about you getting to New Orleans is that you're there to watch that team grow together. The fact that Sean Payton gets you in his second year and you're able to sort of watch in real time as, the Reggie Bush comes in, Deuce McAllister there. The next year, Jeremy Shockey, Deverly Henderson, he kind of took that Marquise Colston-centric offense and it really developed into what Drew Brees has been since then, which is just spreading the ball around with just weapons everywhere.
Right.
When you got there, how much had Sean Payton, what was your feeling on Sean Payton having the buy-in from everyone? And how did you watch that grow year after year up until the Super Bowl year?
Man, let me tell you. So, throughout my career, I've been with several organizations, well, 3 organizations. And that being the first one, I was able to see, hey, this is how it's done.
The bar was
This is
set
how,
somewhere right up here.
exactly. This is how it's done. You got a head coach that knows what he's doing. He's going to put people in places that to where they can be successful. He's not going to step out of his place and try and do too much and try and do things that he's not comfortable with. He's going to take chances, but ultimately everyone works together, and we go as far as we take us. We're going to go as far as we put in. As much as we put in, that's how far we're going to go. And it was one of those messages that was evident from the very first time I stepped on the field. I still remember my rookie mini camp days. I remember my first training camp, and it didn't change. From, I think, our first year, we went 7-9, and that was the year after it just came from an NFC championship that they lost to Chicago in, and every year we were hell bent on getting that Lombardi, winning that Super Bowl. And the very next year we continued to push. We lost some games we should have won, but that third year you could just see that it was something special. And the pieces that were put in place through Mickey, through Sean, and of course Drew leading the helm, man, it was spectacular to be a part of it, because on the defensive side, we flew under the radar. The offense was putting up a lot of big numbers, and the defense was giving up some points. But we were opportunistic, and we were scoring touchdowns, and we were leading the league in takeaways. And it was just one of those moments that you saw it all come together, and you knew the work that you put in was just paying off. And ultimately, like we said from the start, the bar was just set that high, even though we weren't quite there yet. The bar was like, oh no, we're not there. But every week, week in and week out, we ended up coming from behind on I don't know how many games that Super Bowl year, because we were like, hey, look, they ain't got it. They haven't prepared like us. They haven't worked like us. They ain't special. We got this. And we came back from some deficits that I don't think any teams have done throughout any run, let alone the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly a special group of guys. And you kind of already hit on it because you said you've been with 3 organizations, but and it's not to nitpick the Browns and the Raiders, but at the times that you were there, it just wasn't the right collection of coaches players, management, ownership, whatever, piece of the pie each person or team or part should get in the organization. It just wasn't a good fit. I mean, you ultimately signed with the Browns that unfortunately just things weren't gelling. And similar situation with the Raiders. When you look back at your time with those two teams, can you pinpoint anything for like what they were really missing? Or is it there was just too many things to really say it was this thing that they really needed to get right?
It's something that I think football being the ultimate team game, like it's not like basketball where one person can, change the outcome of the game. Like LeBron James being on the team, you're going to the finals, and that's how it's been for like the last 9 or 10 years, whatever. Now with football is not quite like that. You've got so many different moving pieces that have to be in sync to have success. It's special. It's unique, and that's why I said when I went to New Orleans, I saw an organization that was just right. It everything was on point. I mean, from the top down. So then when I went to Cleveland, and we had a lot of different things that were going on, from the selling of the team to so we had new ownership, we had new GM, new head coach, new quarterback, new everything. It takes time. It takes time to get those things in place. Again, I feel like I hit the lotto going to that organization where things were in place. Things were in
Right.
place, and they had a plan, and they were sticking with it. And ultimately, it wasn't like you had 10, 10 years straight of no playoffs. No, we just came off of a playoff year, and things were right. Things were there. They just had to do some fine tuning in certain situations. So I couldn't quite answer that to say why we weren't getting there from Cleveland or Oakland, but I will say it was a lot of different things that were going on. Those moving pieces weren't quite together just yet.
Now, that being said, how many guys have just missed their opportunity in the NFL because they got drafted by that Cleveland team where the coach changed 2 years later and they weren't a fit for the new guy, and then they never had a real chance? How like it just and that's just an example, but I mean over the course of time, how many guys just get caught in that shuffle where just as regimes change, new scheme comes in, they didn't get a chance to put anything on film for 2 years, and now the phone doesn't ring.
I mean, that's tough. That's tough. And it happens all the time. The thing that makes it tough is that getting to the Super Bowl on multiple occasions, it rarely happens. Now you got that one team up northeast that seems to do it pretty regularly, but then you start to think about other teams around the league, and you don't see too many guys that are coming back to back in that game. Now, there's something special about that organization as well. But when I really do think about the guys that do get to benefit from going to an organization that's got it going, a lot of things need to fall in place for you to get there as well. I think about that, my old team in New Orleans. If I really look back at the seasons the past few years, it might have been one or two plays that could have changed the outcome. Some people will blame it on certain things, and it's like, hey, look, that play might have changed the outcome, but ultimately throughout the entire game, there were several plays that might have changed the outcome of a game. And that's, again, the special thing about football, because we like to look at one thing and say, man, if this would have happened, we would have made it here. But you know what? That's how it goes. The ball isn't round. So sometimes it takes some funny bounces. And with the young guys, man, I always say, hey, look, just be in this league and go all out, enjoy the moment, make sure that you take advantage of being in this space, because it's a space of, you got so much influence, so much impact, so much positive change that you can make. You don't want to walk away from the game and say, daggone, why didn't I take advantage of that? Whether you go to the Super Bowl, whether you're an MVP, whatever it is, you're still a legend. You could have been on the practice squad. Guess how many people make it? Less than 1%. So you get to say that you're one of those individuals that made it to the league. And that's what I truly do believe, and I always hone in on those guys.
That's awesome. Well, Usama, as we get to the end here, I want to end with this little thing I call the gauntlet. I hope you're ready to strap that helmet on for a couple quick hitter questions, man, so I can
Oh,
get you out of here. What's most important, man? Having the number one offense or the number one defense?
come on, man.
Have to ask.
Defense.
Now, what would you say is your favorite football memory?
Wow. Ah. So I'm gonna step away from saying holding the Lombardi trophy.
That was the easy choice.
Yeah, I'm gonna step away from that. I say my favorite football moment was my first time stepping on the field, and I was playing fullback for the Kettering Largo Cougars, and I playing fullback. I got a 32 dive, and I hit the hole, and I took it right up the middle and sprinted past both safeties, touchdown for like 60 yards. Now, me never being in the end zone, first time playing the game, I didn't know what to do, so I just kept running straight through, man. Straight through the end zone. I probably ran for about 15 more yards. So I was in a dead sprint, but that was probably when I truly fell in love with football, man.
That is awesome. That's enough to get anyone hooked.
Yes,
Uh,
indeed.
Now, of course, you had a great run. We just recapped a lot of it. Was there ever one player or one coach that you just wish you would have had the chance to somehow cross paths with and play with?
Oh man. So I told you about my workouts, my pre-draft stuff going on. And no doubt, I love the fact and I'm truly grateful to the Saints organization for taking me at pick 66 and Sean Payton, best coach ever. When I was going through that draft process, man, Herm Edwards was special. Herm Edwards was that dude, man. And I watching my highlights and my lowlights with him, it truly like it brought something out of me that as a young player, I was about 20 at the time. I was learning so much from watching my good plays that I thought were good. He's like, look, in the NFL, you're gonna have to step it up. And it was one of those moments where I said, I like to play for that guy. Now on the other end of things, you know, I played for the New Orleans Saints, and I can't even think of another quarterback that I would like to play for. I mean, play alongside and Drew. But if I could take it back, I like to take it back sometime, man, and potentially see how D Green was as a player, or Deion Sanders was as a player, man, and play alongside those guys. But I take that back. I don't know if I want to play alongside those guys because I get all the balls thrown at me, man. I might, but yeah, just seeing those guys live and in their prime, man. As I'm live and in my prime, it would probably be something special to watch.
Absolutely. And I guess bonus question because of what you just said, but playing with Charles Woodson in the Raiders, obviously it wasn't him necessarily at the best part of his career. He was a little long in the tooth by the time he was back in Oakland. But what were your thoughts on someone? I mean, who wins the Heisman? I mean, like just a
Yeah,
very unique talent.
yeah, man. Charles was special. He was special. By the time we met up, I want to say he was 34, and dude was still running more than anybody else. I heard stories about him not being a hard practicer or someone that took time off during the year. I can't think of one day he missed. I can't think of one snap that he turned down. And on game day, all out, like all out from sideline to sideline, whether he was blitzing or he was covering in the middle of the field or he was making the tackle on a bigger running back, he was just putting his all into it. And that's what makes up a Hall of Famer. So, yeah, just seeing that on an everyday basis, I'm fortunate again to be able to spend those years in Oakland seeing him play, whether it was at the end of his career or the beginning. I couldn't imagine anything different.
For sure. Now, what's most important? Is it the players or is it the scheme?
Wow, definitely the players. Definitely the players. And I'm saying that because I look at some teams that can have success with the good scheme or a great scheme, but those players got to execute it. Those players got to be able to follow those X's and O's and be disciplined enough to believe in the scheme. I think 2 years ago we heard that Philly slogan, that trust the process. Like, hey, you got to trust in it. You got to trust in the work that you've done. You got to trust in the work that the coaches have done. and you got to go out there and believe, and you got to do it. And if you don't have players that are going to line up and do it, you don't have a team that's going to line up and do it and be diligent and hold one another accountable, you're not going to have success.
I love it. Now, last one, and I think it's the most important. You've talked a little bit about advice. We beat around the bush a little bit, but I want to ask you directly now. What would you say to a young athlete that sees everything that you were able to do and have the NFL career that you had, win a Super Bowl? What would you tell them for the best piece of advice on how to get there?
And the best piece of advice on how to get there, I would say just go all out. Go all out. Go all out and understand that all the fun and the distractions that are in front of you, they'll be there later on. They'll be there later on. So in my bathroom, I shared this with my brother throughout my high school years. We had a mirror, and in that mirror, my older brother put on there, hit the books, hit the weight room, everything else is secondary. And we don't have to just say hit the books in the weight room, everything else is secondary, but just say, hey, look, your school, the football, or whatever sport you might be into, or whatever extracurricular activity you might be into that you're trying to get to college or you're trying to get to the next level on, hey, go all out with it. Everything else can wait. So until you put the time spent in to be successful at that, you don't go and party, and you don't go and spend hours, playing video games. Knock out your homework, do your extra drills, do your extra studying, and then you can have that fun. But hit the books, hit the weight room, everything else is secondary.
And there it is from a guy that's walked the walk at the highest level. Usama, thank you so much for coming on, man. I'm sure that the NFL is much better off having you talking to their players, and I'm sure there's only big, huge things going to continue to come from believing you.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me as well.